Hi, everyone. So today we're going to take a quick look at the history of cinema. Cinema, often called the seventh art, has evolved over the past century into one of the most powerful storytelling mediums in human history. From its origins in the 19th century to the rise of digital filmmaking and streaming platforms, the history of cinema is a journey filled with innovation, artistic breakthroughs, and cultural significance. Before cinema as we know it, people experimented with various visual storytelling methods. Some key inventions paved the way for motion pictures. The magic lantern, for example, from 1600s, was a simple device that projected images on a screen using painted slides and a light source like a candle. The zoetrope, developed in 1834, was a spinning drum with slits that created the illusion of movement when viewed through its slots. Photography and motion studies in the early 1800s by Edward Muybridge showed us that the study of motion, when he put cameras in sequence that could capture movement, if you looked at the images, all that the question was would all four legs of the horse be off the ground at any one given time? And of course, he proved that yes, they were, and he showed us that when they were moved in sequence. So the true birth of cinema comes in the late 19th century with the development of motion picture cameras. Thomas Edison and W.K.L. Dickson, 1891, developed the kinetoscope, a peep show device allowing one person to view moving images. And then the Lumiere brothers in 1895, often credited as the true pioneers of cinema, Auguste and Louis, created the cinématographie, a device that could record, develop, and project moving images. Their first film, Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory, was publicly screened in Paris on December 28, 1895, marking the birth of cinema as an entertainment industry. Kinetoscope, of the forerunner of the motion picture film projector invented by Thomas A. Edison and William Dickson of the United States, is a strip of film passed rapidly between a lens and an electric light bulb while the viewer peered through a peephole. Behind the peephole was a spinning wheel with the narrow slit that acted as a shutter, permitting the momentary view of each of the 46 frames passing in front of the shutter every second. And so what happens is as individual frames are passed through, your eye closes the idea that they're moving. So it's like a flip book where, things, really single images, but when you flip them and they go fast, they look like they're moving. So the result was a lifelike representation of persons and objects in motion. At first, Edison regarded his invention as an insignificant toy. He secured his U.S. patent, but neglected to obtain patents from other countries. In 1894, when the kinetoscope was finally publicly exhibited in Broadway and New York City, it created an immediate sensation. Several kinetoscopes sold in Europe, forming the basis of the first apparatus used to project motion picture. I don't know if this is going to play or not, but we will see.
From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
This is the first film that they created, and it was a man sneezing. There you have it.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.
Kind of cool. The next is the Lumiere brothers. They were French inventors and pioneer manufacturers of photographic equipment who devised an early motion picture camera and projector called the cinématographie, or cinema is derived from its name. Auguste Lumiere and his brother, Louis, created the film La Sortie des Ouvriers de l'Usine Lumière, Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory, which is considered the very first motion picture. Sons of a painter turned photographer, the two boys displayed a brilliance in science at school in Lyon, where their father had settled. And so here we go. We'll watch this quickly. And there they are, leaving the factory. It's really quite clear too. It looks pretty good. It's probably been cleaned up some. Yeah, a lot of women working there. Okay. The next thing that we're going to look at is the silent film. So, silent film is a film without synchronized recorded sound, or more generally, no audio, no dialogue. Those silent films convey narrative and emotionally, visually, and various plot elements such as the setting and the era and storyline. Key lines of dialogue may, when necessary, be conveyed by the use of what are called intertitle cards, and so that was the way that it worked. Pioneers of the silent era were Georges Méliès with his A Trip to the Moon, a magician turned filmmaker. Méliès pioneered visual effects and fantasy storytelling and narrative cinema, and really, is considered one of the great films to even see today. Edward Porter, The Great Train Robbery, introduced continuity editing. So, what that means is, say, for example, you've got a car going in one direction, and then the next scene, the car's going in the opposite direction. Well, you think they're going back home. So you have to have the car constantly going in the same direction so that it feels like there's continuity, that it's, really happening. So he looked at all of that stuff. He also used cross-cutting techniques, setting the foundation for modern filmmaking. And then there was D.W. Griffith, The Birth of a Nation, 1915. Though controversial, Griffith's film revolutionized cinema with advanced storytelling techniques. He embraced the idea of a close-up and large-scale historical epics. So, A Trip to the Moon is a French science fiction adventure trick film written, depicted, directed, and produced by Georges Méliès. It was inspired by Jules Verne's 1865 novel From the Earth to the Moon and its 1875 sequel Around the Moon. The film follows a group of astronomers who travel to the moon in a cannon-propelled capsule, explore the moon's surface, and escape from an underground group of Selenites, lunar inhabitants. So we thought people lived there, and return to Earth with a captive Selenite. Méliès leads an ensemble cast of French theatrical performers as the main character, Professor Barbafulez. Although the film disappeared into obscurity after Méliès's retirement from the film industry, it was rediscovered around 1930 when Méliès's importance to the history of cinema was beginning to be recognized by devotees of film. An original hand-colored print was discovered in 1993, and it was restored in 2011. A Trip to the Moon was ranked 84th among the 100 greatest films of the 20th century. So, let's see if this will play. And here we go. You can just see how amazing some of the effects are for the time frame, 1895. Moon dust, or something like that. I love the big mushrooms. Look at those, even morels. I like the jellyfish too. And there we have it. A trip to the moon. The next big invention that we see is sound. So the introduction of sound created new narrative possibilities, allowing for more complex storytelling and dialogue-driven plots. This period also saw the beginning of the dominance of the major studios, which were able to invest heavily in this new sound technology, further shaping our Hollywood system. So we have the rise of the studio system, musicals like Singing in the Rain, 1952, gangster films, Scarface, film noir, Double Indemnity, 1944, Western Stagecoach, 1939, actors like Charlie Chaplin, Humphrey Bogart, Katharine Hepburn, Marilyn Monroe, all became cultural icons during this time frame. So it's the rise of the studio system, film genres and stars emerge, and then these particular genres became very, very popular. After World War II, cinema experienced a revolution as independent filmmakers challenged Hollywood's dominance. The New Wave, French New Wave or French Nouvelle Vague, also called the French New Wave, is a French art film movement that emerged in the late 1950s. The movement was characterized by its reaction of traditional filmmaking conventions in favor of experimentation and the spirit of iconoclasm. So the global film movements that we see during this time frame are Italian neorealism from 1940 to 1950s, focused on real life stories and non-professional actors. A good movie to watch if you're interested is The Bicycle Thieves from 1948. French New Wave, 1950s to 1960s, directors like Jean-Luc Godard and Francois Truffaut broke traditional storytelling rules with experimental editing. A good one would be Breathless, 1960. Japanese cinema, global film movements, again, Akira Kurosawa, Seven Samurai, Yasujiro Uzu, Tokyo Story, influenced global cinema, and then let's move on. And so Hollywood has its own new wave. Hollywood embraced riskier artistic films. Directors like Stanley Kubrick, Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, and Francis Ford Coppola redefined cinema with films like 2001: Space Odyssey, 1968, The Taxi Driver, 1970s. The Space Odyssey is in 1968, Taxi Driver in 1976. Jaws, 1975, and The Godfather in 1972. The next kind of change that we see in cinema is the blockbuster era. Steven Spielberg, Jaws, and George Lucas's Star Wars started the summer blockbuster trend. Films like E.T. and The Extraterrestrial, that was from 1982, and Jurassic Park, 1993, used groundbreaking special effects. James Cameron's Titanic from 1997 became one of the highest grossing films of all time until Avatar in 2009. The digital revolution also happens during this time from 1990s to 2000, and we see things like Pixar's Toy Story from 1995. It's a fully animated CGI film, and it completely revolutionized animation, because prior to that everything was done with hand drawings and so forth, like Fantasia. The Matrix, 1999, introduced bullet time visual effects that changed action filmmaking. And then, of course, Lord of the Rings from 2001 to 2003 set completely new standards for CGI and motion capture performances. Incredible stuff that happened during that time frame. And then now, what do we have but streaming? So the 21st century saw major shifts in film. Netflix, Disney, and HBO Max basically changed how we consume our film. So we went from traditional theaters and watching film on television to streaming film, where we could get it on our phones or on any of our different devices. AI and virtual production also took over. So we have superhero dominance like the Avengers and the Dark Knight trilogy, The Mandalorian, which is AI and virtual production, and then of course diversity in filmmaking like the Parasite and everything everywhere all at once. So these are, the move that we're in now where kind of anything goes. We have so much history and so many ways to think about how we're going to make film, and so much ability to crunch graphics with the high end computers that we have today that we didn't have, for most of filmmaking history. So, in conclusion, from silent films to streaming, cinema continues to evolve with technology. While traditional theaters still play a role, AI, virtual reality, and digital storytelling are shaping the next era of filmmaking. What do you think the future is for cinema? Will AI generated movies dominate, or will theaters make a comeback? I'd love to hear what your comments are. Please put them in the comments of this video. And I really appreciate you watching this. And till next time.